Hello, everybody. I have in my hand one book, two novellas, 17 and J by Kenzaburo O, no, Nobel laureate of literature from Japan. I've read 17. I have not read J, nor am I going to, because 17 is the worst book or novella or story that I have read in a very long time. I cannot believe this guy won the Nobel Prize in literature. So, how did I get here? Well, I saw that shocking short video. I saw it as an animated GIF of a Japanese guy on stage and some youth just slamming into him from the side. And then when you watch it more slowly, you realize that the young guy is slamming into him with a samurai sword and actually sticking him with the samurai sword and pushing it in with all the body weight. It was actually the most famous in a wave of political murders that swept Japan in the early 60s. And in this case, it was an outspoken communist getting killed by a 17-year-old Japanese nationalist, hence the name of this book, 17. The person killed was the chairman of the Socialist Party of Japan. All right. So it mentions here in the intro. Again, the intro is the most famous part. I said this about Metamorphosis. I'm saying it about this book. So, not Metamorphosis, Meditations. So this book really turns me off to fiction, makes me want to read nonfiction about the period of time, because this is so horribly biased. All right, so the murder happened in October 1960 on live television. This book was published, this novella was published in January 1961. So I don't know when in October, but there's the rest of October, November, December, and I don't know when in January that was published. So you have somewhere between 2 and 4 months between this murder and this novella, which presumes to tell the story of the murderer. So I think already you have a very presumptuous writer. It's even disrespectful to fictionalize something, fictionalize sort of the events surrounding a murder in such a short time after it happens. All right, and it's done with bias that rivals the media's bias against Donald Trump. So you get pages long descriptions of the young guy who's 17. You get pages long description of him masturbating. He's just filled with self-loathing. He's a huge loser. You know, he gets picked on in school. He passes out in school. I think he urinates his pants. Like, it's so... It makes no effort at depth. It's like... It reads like a hit piece. Now, on one hand, you could say that this is the Japanese backlash after their flirtation with fascism. So they think, so maybe the writer is recoiling at, nationalism, fascism. Oh my God, it's so horrible. How could anybody possibly deal with this? And he's like, oh, I know how. He's just a pathetic human being. But this is 1960. And by 1956, the Hungarian Revolution, everyone should have known about the horrors of communism. You already had China's Great Leap Forward, where tens of millions of people were killed. You already had Holodomor in Ukraine. All right, it was obvious by this point that communist societies were extremely tyrannical, as the Hungarian Revolution made clear. You had thousands of people desperate to flee. All right, and just to treat this murder of a communist like just, he must be crazy, he must be just a pathetic loser who finds power, it's just so shallow and just such a disservice to what literature and what writing should be. By the way, this author Kenzaburo, it says he accepted the Nobel Prize, but he rejected the Order of Culture from the Emperor of Japan, which is exactly the sort of self-loathing, anti-tradition revolutionary that the left seems to mobilize. So let's read the first couple paragraphs. Today is my birthday, 17 years of age I am today. A17, which was a reference to the magazine cover, 17. But nobody in my family realizes it's my birthday. Not my father, not my mother, or my brother, or at least they act like they don't. So I keep quiet about it too. Toward evening, my older sister comes home from the Self-Defense Force hospital where she works as a nurse. I'm in the bathroom lathering myself with soap. 17 years old, she calls out to me. Doesn't it just make you want to grab yourself? Ugh. Why is the left just so obsessed with degeneracy? And here you see that it's a worldwide trend. It's not. Uh, all right, this is so cringy. I don't know if I should read it. Maybe I will. Um, I repeat what my sister said. As I think about her words, my sex stands up out of the soap in a sudden erection. I go and lock the bathroom door. It seems like I'm always having erections, like erections. This is only page 2, all right? So it's like, it's just like slander against this young man. I don't like the reddish black adult sex looking completely naked. Ah. It goes on for pages. He's still masturbating. Still. Okay, and he masturbates for like 4 pages. And then he's thinking, now, okay, what do we move on? Okay, maybe we'll get a little depth. Maybe we'll get a little character development. Okay, here's page 6. Now he's imagining other people seeing that he masturbates. So, like, maybe they can see through me every time they see my big ugly nose. Look, he's the one who does you know what. Maybe they gossip about it. I can't help feeling the same way. I can't help feeling the same way I did when I thought masturbation was bad for me. Come to think of it, things haven't improved a bit since. But by things, I mean I'd be so ashamed if people knew about my masturbating that I'd want to die. Ah, that. People probably say, that guy is a full-time masturbator. Look at the color of his face. Look at those cloudy eyes. They probably look at me and spit like they're seeing something disgusting. I'd like to kill them. I'd like to machine gun them to death, every last one of them. I say it out loud. I want to kill them with a machine gun, every last one of them. I want to kill them all. If only I had a machine gun. Okay, so now we're on page 7. If America goes home, don't you think the left-wingers are going to want to invite the Soviet military bases so they can sleep a little easier? Very interesting bit of historic reference. And again, it makes me want to read about the period, about the political scene in Japan in the 60s, instead of this stupid one-sided novella. But I guess the Japanese communists were close to the Soviets, and if the Americans left, the Soviets would come and put their military bases in place. Very interesting, right? Okay, obviously somebody who murders a communist can't possibly have any legitimate reasons for doing so. He admits it here. I know I can't grasp the world the way the left grasps it. The plain truth is I don't understand a thing. Ugh. It's just so biased. Alright, and here he's masturbating again. But my orgasm is approaching. Peach flowers bloom everywhere around me. Hot springs bubble up. Physical education is my work subject. I'm practically paralyzed with fear. I have to run 800 meters, and I have to do it in the big sports field in full view of the female students and everybody on the street. There's just no value here. It's just... Oh, so he goes. This is interesting. He goes to listen some right wing politician rant, and what he says about the left, apparently in Japan in the '60s, what this guy says about the left seems to be like universally true. Uh, this politician who's ranting on stage, and of course he's portrayed as just a psycho, but he says, "Who's been responsible for more terrorism in modern times? Right or left, I ask you. Those red pigs carry out a massacre and nobody says a word. The concentration camps weren't just a Nazi thing. The Russians have them too, and even worse." And that is kind of true, but here it's portrayed as just this guy being insane. Okay, and the plot kind of turns here on page 55 after listening to this speech of some right-wing politician in Japan. The main character identifies as a rightist. I'm a rightist, and he turns towards some girls and who were kind of saying like, look how stupid this is, and he says, "I'm seized by the sudden intense joy. It makes me shivered. I've touched the essence of myself. I am a rightist, I repeat." I move a step closer to the girls. They hold each other and raise faint, frightened cries of protest. I place myself in front of the girls and the men standing nearby. Without speaking a word, I face the whole lot, my eyes filled with hostility and hate. They all stare at me. I am a rightist. Even though they're staring at me, I'm not flustered. I don't blush. I feel a new me. These others no longer see the wretched me who wets his penis in masturbation, giving it the moist look of a green stem of grass that's just been snapped off. Such degeneracy. Yeah, so he's a rightist. He, of course, the uniform of the Imperial Way, some organization he joined, is modeled after the Nazi SS uniform. That's a historic fact, which if I had more regard for this novel, I may look up whether that was indeed the case. Oh, here. But now, instead of seeing what's inside me, others see the uniform of the right. More than that, it instills them with fear. Behind the impenetrable curtain of the right-wing uniform, I can hide forever the soul of an easily wounded young man. This is pretty typical. Like the only way the left can understand conservative is much of the left can understand conservative is by assuming that they're just broken or evil or that they have some medical condition. In the Soviet times, they used to put people in mental hospitals if they didn't recognize the obvious blessings of communism. And that's it. And it kind of ends with oh he starts saying like the selfishness. I need to sacrifice myself for this vision, and then he ends with to my golden vision, I promise a bloodbath. There's a reason that most creative types are leftists. Creative people like to exist on the fringes of things. They like to exist on the fringes, and leftists are a little bit about breaking with tradition and overturning society, so a little bit more experimentation. But if this is supposed to be literature and by a Nobel laureate, if that's what this is supposed to be, then that's not an excuse, because by 1960 the horrors of communism were obvious. They were plain for all the world to see, despite the propaganda that was happening everywhere. And there are many reasons to use violence to keep communism out of your society. Like, you don't have to be a degenerate or a psychopath to hate communism and to defend yourself against it. So, worst story I've read in a long time. Thanks for listening. I've got a couple more to do today.